All right, we're going to talk about the SmashTech Slow Glide that's getting ready to be released here in a couple weeks. This is an unpainted blank. I'm getting ready to paint the first batch. And I'm going to tell you why it's made the way it's made and why it's the name is the Slow Glide. A lot of times I've bought glides through the years and fished with different glides, and a lot of people make great glides, but if you'll see that thing, I've made them to where they barely sink and they just kind of hang there. They're what you would almost call super tuning. Right now I was just bumping the reel a couple times, but I wanted to be able to have a 7.5 inch glide that I could get out really wide. This tank is about 50 inches, so it's over 4 foot wide, and with small reel bumps, and I would almost call them light reel pulls even, you can get it to get really wide, and it just kind of gets out there on the end of a glide and just hangs there. That's what I wanted out of a glide. A lot of times I wanted to fish one really slow, and a lot of brand of glides that I've used through the past would start falling way too fast for me to fish it at the speed I wanted to fish it. And while I was building this, you see kind of a fad where everybody wants to burn this, burn that. Now I do like to burn jointed baits, but on glide baits, I do not burn them. I do not fish them fast. I fish them slow. This glide bait will not burn. So if you like to burn a glide bait, you don't need to buy this. If you like to fish a glide bait the way I fish a glide bait, then this is fine. This is perfect. If you'll watch a lot of the guys that are really successful catching really big fish on glide baits, you could almost fall asleep during a retrieve watching some of those guys. And if you'll notice, a lot of times if you watch YouTube videos, they will speed up the retrieve until they set the hook, just because you don't want to sit there for 4 or 5 minutes watching them make one retrieve. Now the way I've got these tuned is a fairly wide glide with just reel bumps, and I do kind of a long pause reel bumps. That's just let it go out there, and just a reel pull, let it get out there. Now you can chop it a little more and shorten up the glide. Now this tank is not very long, so it's hard to get a lot of different variations in one retrieve. So I'll have to show you kind of different stages. So you can still chop it back and forth with it set the way it is. I've got a pin that's removable, and you can tune it, and I'll show you that here in just a second. So right now it's kind of set to where it'll get out there wide, but it'll still chop a little bit. And if you fish glides much, you'll know that a controllable glide, you can steer. Say you cast past a dock or a bush or a tree, and maybe you were a little off. Well, you can steer that glide bait by doing short bumps and longer bumps to get it to go a direction that you want it to go. So if I throw it out there and say that is a dock on the left side that I want it to be closer to, I can do a short chop that way, long glide that way, short chop that way, long glide that way, and I can get it over there. And, you can even work it around things. If you happen to see a lay down and you want to go from one side of the lay down to the other, you could. If you notice, like I said, see it's sinking really slow. You can bounce it over here for a couple glides, and then bounce it back way over here. Short glide, bounce it back over here. 9 times out of 10, when I retrieve it, I'm doing it just like this. Just nice, long, slow glides. And see how it just hangs. Now I can take a pair of pliers, pull this pin, and what you want to do is take the screw eyes that hold the pin, the pin goes through, and you can go out one full turn. And what you'll see is that's going to tighten up the glide considerably. See how it turns on itself a lot more. It's not getting out near as far. It's almost, you can still work it really slow, but it's going to be in a much tighter line. So if you like a choppier glide with a very slow sink and slow retrieve, you can back that joint out and it'll turn around if you give it a little slack line. Some people like this choppier back and forth. I find that I like this choppy back and forth if you're fishing really tight to cover and you want it to stay in one area but have action. So you can speed it up a little bit, but like I said, this is not made to be fished fast. And you can still just a straight slow to medium slow retrieve. And it's still got that S to it. Now I'm going to take and tighten it back up. Show you all the difference again. So I'll go back in around. And you tighten that joint up, tighten that gap up, it doesn't allow it to turn on itself quite as easily. See how it gets much wider. Just kind of glides out. Let it sink down. Well, a lot of times the way I fish it is I will let it sink on down 3 or 4 feet, and then I'll start just a slow retrieve. Even with the joint set to a little wider glide, you can still straight retrieve it. this is just over the years, and I've been working on this one for off and on for year and a half, 2 years, because I've had so much other stuff to do. I haven't been able to really sit down and work on it until the last few months. But it's just nice and lazy. You can take, probably go in another, we'll go in another half. Let's see what that does. You'll get to a point where you can get it too tight, but if you really want to get it out wide, and these work even better on longer casts. Like I said, I don't have very much room in this tank to get a full retrieve, but if you'll notice, that was another half. I can get it to almost go from one side of this tank to the other. If you really like a wide glide, this is a really wide glide for the size of bait. It's only 7.5 inches, including the tail, and it weighs in right at about 3 ounces. Whenever they come out, they'll be set the way I normally would fish one, and you can play with the joints if you like them a little bit wider or a little bit choppier. When they're tightened up, it can get really far out there. So, like I said, if it's a burn you're wanting to do with the glide bait, this is not the glide bait for you. If you like to fish a glide bait the way I like to fish it, and the way a lot of the very successful anglers that you'll see fishing glide baits, nice and slow, real bumps, nothing too overpowering. You don't want to overpower the bait. This will be a perfect glide bait. We're going to come in at $120. I'm trying to keep the price point down, even though materials and labor, it's very expensive to make one of these as far as labor, all the time it takes tuning and then finally painting. But I just don't agree with a lot of the rosin baits going for $200 to $300. I'm going to try to keep it at $120 for as long as I can. So that's the SmashTech Slow Glide.